Because of the great work of my campaign team, we had a huge registration response from across the nation for this meeting. So helping us today is Catherine Barranco, Eva Brady, Maria Sophia, Liliana Narkitis, Kim Bowers, Sharon Osfeld, Echo Van Metteren, and Erin Wiener. Thank you very much, ladies. A special thank you to my mentor and RNC National Committee woman for New Jersey, Ginny Haynes, for helping me set up the Zoom with Chairwoman McDaniel. I'd like to thank Phil Valenzano, the RNC Regional Political Director, who was also a tremendous help, and from my home state, New Jersey. And with the RNC Communications, Rachel Lee, for being here. There are too many people to mention who are logged on to tonight's meeting, but I'd like to thank everyone from the NFRW's Executive Committee that has joined us. So first, I'd like to introduce our National Federation of Republican Women's President, Eileen Sobczak, to say a few words.
Thank you, Noriko, and welcome everyone. I am so excited about our meeting tonight. Thank you, Chairman McDaniel, for being here, and looking forward to hearing about this very important election and how we can all work together as Republican women and the Republican Party. And I just wanted to let you know, we sent you an invitation to attend our September 28th to October 1st biennial convention in Oklahoma City. And that's my background here, Republican Women Lead. And I just wanted to personally invite you, and I hope you will join us there this fall. And thank you. Now I hand it over to Vanessa.
My name is Vanessa LaFranco, and I am the first vice president of the National Federation of Republican Women, and I'm lucky enough to be the advisor to the powerhouse that is the Political and Campaign Committee. Because of the grassroots efforts of our members of the National Federation of Republican Women, we have contributed over $250 million worth of volunteer hours to campaigns last year alone, a testament to the power of grassroots efforts in advancing the Republican cause. In 2022, we reclaimed the House. In 2024, we will once again unite as a federation and take back the White House. Now, it is my pleasure today to introduce our distinguished guest, Republican National Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. The NFRW and RNC are a formidable partnership, united in our shared mission to rectify the tragic missteps of the bumbling Biden administration, a collaboration that will bring forth a bright future in our great nation. In 2017, Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel became the second woman ever elected as chair of the Republican National Committee. Under her leadership, the RNC has raised over $1.5 billion, made its largest ever ground game investment, built an election integrity operation from the ground up, grew grassroots fundraising to 1 million contributors, and transferred funds to all 56 state and territory parties. Throughout the chairwoman's tenure, the RNC defied history by gaining seats in the Senate during the 2018 election cycle and took back the House in 2022. In January 2023, Chairwoman McDaniel was elected to a historic fourth term, making her the longest serving female chair of either national party. Please join me in welcoming Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel.
Thank you, Vanessa. I wish I could capture your energy and your passion and just spread it all over the country. Congratulations on your role. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you to everybody at NFRW. I do want to thank Eileen Sobczak. She is amazing. I think I've told you, Eileen, many, many times that Eileen is the preferred middle name of every woman in our family. My daughter's middle name's Eileen. All my nieces' middle names are Eileen. So I love that you have that name and you're a great president. Thank you, Noriko, for everything you've done, and Jenny Haynes for putting this together. I really appreciate you. And I want to give a shout out to two other RNC members that are very heavily involved with the NFRW, which is Pam Pollard, who many of you know from Oklahoma, and Tony Andishiel from Texas. So thanks for having me tonight. I look forward to Q&A. I'll give a little bit of an update on what we're seeing right now as we're heading into 2024. And then I'm happy to take questions. But let me just once again reiterate, the absolute powerhouse that NFRW is. And just thank you for your leadership. You have grown so much even since my tenure as chair. What you do to help register voters, to turn out the vote, all that you do across the country. You are a big reason as to why we did take back the House, and you're going to be a big reason as to why we win the Senate back, the White House, and expand the House in 2024. So thank you so much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm from Michigan. I'm in Michigan right now. I have a gaggle of teenage boys. I've determined that my house has become the hub for every teenage boy in Michigan right now, because my son just graduated high school, and I think every week I have a new friend staying before they head to college. So they're always at my house right now, which is great. As a mom, you love that. They eat a lot of food. We all know that. I got into politics like many of you. I grew up in politics. My mom had run for Senate. My grandpa had been governor of Michigan. But really, when my husband and I came back to Michigan, I had lived in a lot of different places. Diane, I lived in Maryland. I lived in Kentucky. I didn't expect to get really back in politics, but our state was suffering. We had a terrible governor. You might know who she is. She's the Secretary of Energy right now, named Jennifer Granholm. She was as bad as governor of Michigan as she is as Secretary of Energy, and jobs were fleeing our state. And it was heartbreaking to watch my friends lose their jobs, to see my friends lose their homes, to go into bankruptcy. It was personal. Our schools were suffering. So I ran for precinct delegate. I was a door knocker. I was secretary of my district committee. I was a state committee woman. Then I became national committee woman, and then took on the role as state party chair in 2015, but all grassroots. And I know better than anyone, grassroots are the grassroots are the powerhouse of our party. They are the blood, sweat, and tears of knocking the doors and making the difference in elections. We care so much. But I also know, coming from being a PTA mom and a room mom and a stay-home mom before doing this, women have a way of just getting things done. We're great organizers. We are great leaders, and we make a difference in our communities. So thank you. As I've been RNC chair, I've learned a lot. I love this job, and I'm really excited now in my 4th term, which I think is a record, to go forward and put us in a position with all of you and on these great candidates to win. So map for 2024, obviously we want to beat Biden. Key number 1, we have the best Senate map we're going to have in 12 years. We're not going to have a Senate map like this for a long, long time. We have to capitalize on this. It is the inverse of what we had in 2022. In 2022, we were defending over 20 seats. The Democrats had very few seats to defend. It's actually the opposite this cycle. They have 21 seats up. We have about 7 seats up. So we are at a great position in states like Ohio and West Virginia, Montana, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, where we're going to have an open seat. Really great opportunity to flip the Senate. The House, we've got to hold in a presidential year. We've got to keep those gains that we had in New York and California, and then expand the map, which I think we're going to do in states like North Carolina and Ohio and other states as well. And then obviously win the presidency. So from an RNC perspective, here are the things we're focusing on right now. You know, all the shiny objects in politics are usually ads and what's on TV. Democrats understand that that's not what wins elections, and we do too. Process is a big part of it. What are you doing in voter registration in states? What are you doing to turn out your vote? So a big part of what the RNC is doing right now is we're expanding our election integrity operation. We created our first election integrity operation for the 2022 cycle. We never had this before. We were under a law that prevented us from doing this, a law order called the consent decree that didn't let us do any poll watching or any organization on that front. So we've now created our own department that's going to govern that. We're in 50 lawsuits right now. You can't imagine the things Democrats go into states to do to try and erode the integrity of our elections, things like downgrading signature match, or getting rid of voter ID, or more drop boxes, or ballot harvesting, all these things that we know are not best practices for elections. So we're in lawsuits right now in 50 different states, but we're also actively recruiting poll watchers and poll workers in these states as well. So that's a big part of what we're doing right now. A second part of what we're doing is we just launched a Bank Your Vote initiative, and I encourage all of you to go to bankyourvote.com. We need to educate our voters that if there's a 45-day voting period, we need to be voting all 45 of those days. We can't wait till election day to get it all done. We can't let the Democrats have head start and then think we're going to catch up on election day. So this initiative is going to be nationwide, and we're going to be working to educate voters, tell them how to vote early, and help them know how to track their ballot to make sure that it actually is getting counted. The third thing that we're really working on as well is our community engagement centers. Many of you may not be aware that in 2022, we had 38 different community engagement centers in Black, Asian, and Hispanic communities. And these are places our party has just ignored. We have not been in many of these communities for far too long, and we've just ceded it to the Democrats. And you know what the Democrats have done? They've taken those votes for granted. And what we have done by being in these communities have said, we want you to learn about the Republican parties because our values align. We care about school choice. We care about religious freedom. We care about economic opportunity. And when we're in these communities long-term, we're seeing huge gains with those voters. We're also in a Native American community in North Carolina called the Lumbee Indian community. And where we had these centers in 2022, they were specifically in House districts that were target districts. We saw exponential growth in our party. In fact, we saw a 17-point increase with Asian voters, a 10-point increase with Hispanic voters, and a 4-point increase with Black voters. So this is something I'm passionate about. We have 6 of these offices already open for the 2024 cycle, and we will be opening more. Our goal is to get to 40. Finally, we are about to have our first debate. I'm sure you're all following this. I think I got 3 calls from presidential candidates today on this. So just briefly, let me give you a little background. Our first debate is going to be in Milwaukee on August 23rd. This is the city where we're going to have our convention for 2024. Wisconsin is a swing state. This is going to be a critical place for us to be. And I am so excited for this first debate. But we did put some criteria forward for the debate. And I've said this publicly, and I've said this many, many times. You don't go to the Olympics unless you get through the prelims, right? So we have put some criteria forward. Not everybody can make the debate stage unless they have some of these criteria met. 1% in 3 national polls, or 2% in a 2 national poll, 1% in 2 national polls, and 1% in 2 state, first in the nation state polls. 40,000 small dollar donations. So that's $1 from 40,000 different people. The Democrats had a 60,000 threshold for the 2020 election. We thought 40,000 is about right. You're not going to be competitive unless you have a small dollar fundraising operation. And then finally, and the one that gets the most news, is committing to support the Beat Biden pledge, which is you commit that no matter what happens at the end of the day, if you give your best case to the voters and they choose someone else to be the nominee, you will support the nominee of our party. And why is that so important? Well, we can't win. We can't win without every Republican coming together. Democrats love it when we're divided, when we're attacking each other, when we're name calling, when we're doing our circular firing squad in our Republican echo chamber. We can't do that. We can't do that and win. It's electorally impossible. So I think if you're going to be given access to the Republican National Committee debate stage, you should be willing to commit to support the will of the voters and say, you know what, the voters made this decision and I respect them enough to support the nominee. And so that is a big part of our debate stage criteria. We are very, very excited about that, and really looking forward to this kickstarting. Obviously, the first caucus is going to be in Iowa. We have kept our calendar the same. The Democrats have changed theirs to favor their incumbent president. Shows how weak he is that they had to do that. But we are very, very thrilled with the Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and then South Carolina being the first 4 states. So I'm thrilled to be here. I am very, very optimistic as we go forward into 2024. And I hope that as all of you are on this call, that we continue to bring people into our party and grow our party. I'm worried about our country, desperately worried about our country. I'm worried about what we're seeing under Joe Biden with the border, with drugs, with crime, with our schools being so horribly underfunded or unable to educate our children. You look at the terrible test scores coming out of the pandemic. This is a nation that is declining under Democrat leadership, and a lot of Americans are looking to us right now to right that ship. So I'm excited to do it with all of you. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the NFRW. And I'd love to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Well, you
you.
already answered a few of the questions that we
Okay,
had
great.
teed up for you. So you took that a little bit of that part away. I think it's just a personal thing. The criteria that you're putting forward to get on stage is an excellent idea.
Thank you.
Hopefully that it will control a little of the chaos that we saw in the previous years. To that end, actually, I want to back up just a little bit. You mentioned defeating President Biden multiple times. And one of our questions that were presented is, do you think that Joe Biden will actually be the Democratic nominee? Or do you think that Robert Kennedy or another candidate might overtake him on the way there, on the journey?
So I do think that Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. I've been saying this for a long time. I watched, I was watching Fox Business today and Stuart Varney's like, Joe Biden's not going to be the nominee. I hear this on lots of calls. I do, mainly because of how much they've switched the primary calendar. They have switched South Carolina to be the first state. New Hampshire will probably still go first. It is their law that they are the first in the nation primary. Joe Biden probably will not be on that ballot. I could see Robert Kennedy actually winning that primary, but the DNC will not recognize those delegates. They will not recognize New Hampshire. It doesn't matter if he wins it if those delegates aren't recognized. So Joe Biden came in 8th in New Hampshire, or I think 6th in New Hampshire in 2020. He came in, we don't even know what happened in Iowa. I don't know if you all remember that. He did not win Iowa. So they have strategically fixed the calendar to benefit him. I think Joe Biden needs to stay in as president. I think a lot of the Democrats want him gone, but I think he's got some legal jeopardy that he's exposed to, and he wants to stay in as president. He's not going anywhere. They're going to have to kick him out, and I just don't see that happening.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much. Going back to the debates, what other additional actions is the RNC taking to coordinate the debate dates and to determine partners going forward beyond Milwaukee and onward?
That's a great question. So the RNC has a debate committee. Dave Bossy from Maryland actually is the head of the debate committee. And we've got members from Alaska to Illinois to Tennessee that serve on this committee. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the thoughtful way these members have really worked to create the debate criteria. So the first debate is going to be with Fox News and also Rumble. It'll be the first time we live stream on Rumble. So this is a way to get away from YouTube and some of these tech companies that have really canceled the Republican Party and expand a conservative platform. And then also Young America's Foundation, because we know we need to be reaching out to young voters. This is run by Scott Walker. You will see similar types of partnerships as we head into the other debates. Part of the reason we're not announcing every debate is the longer we wait, the more leverage we have with every network. But you will see us strategically trying to find new ways to reach different voters. Let's be honest, a lot of people right now are not watching traditional news. My kids who are 20 and 18, they don't watch the news. They're getting everything through TikTok or streaming platforms. They don't go on in Comcast. They don't know who Brett Baer is or any of the personalities on Fox. That's not their news source. So I really do want to find a way to expose our candidates to a passive viewer that may not be tuning in for the news, but can see them through different platforms. So you'll see some creativity coming through this, and we're figuring out ways to expand our reach, because this is a great opportunity to reach new viewers and introduce them to what our party stands for.
Good. Well, actually, that's a good segue into the next question. How should we and can we balance the significance and importance of our traditional grassroots campaigning that so many of us on this call have bread and butter and very familiar with the growing popularity, as you mentioned, social media and influencers in the campaign process? How do we, I guess, engage better on those fronts that are a little more foreign to us, but also keep our older, our more seasoned campaigners engaged as well?
Well, it's both. I mean, we all know the best way to change a vote is through somebody you know, right? If I talk to a friend of mine and they say, I know John James, this great candidate running for Congress in Michigan, and I spent time with him, and he went to West Point and he flew Apache helicopters, but let me just tell you what a great guy he is. That's a better way to change my vote than a robocall or a digital ad. So that grassroots component of knocking doors in neighborhoods with people that we know, I think is the best way. I love knocking doors personally. I love taking my kids to knock doors. I think it's great character building. I used to take them when they were little. But more and more social media is becoming a big part of how we communicate in our country, and especially with the Gen Z and younger voters that are coming of age. Like my son, he's going to vote this year. He gets all of his news. I wish he wasn't on TikTok. He is on TikTok, from TikTok. So we have engaged some social media influencers through the RNC. I'm not going to tell you their names because we don't want people to know that we're engaging them because we don't need them branded RNC, but we are pushing content through them. We've built their audience and we know what we're getting. And it's fascinating to watch the breadth of what we're sending out and how it's growing. We've engaged a young person who's helping come up with that plan for us. You're going to see these influencers at our debates. You're going to see them have access to our candidates. And we are really going to work to amp up our information and engagement with young voters. Now, influencers do not mean votes. So I want to say this. If you think you're seeing something on TikTok a million times and that means that's reality, it's not. It does not replace good old data-driven grassroots door knocking. It just doesn't. So you can have the best ads on TV, you can have the best influencer page. If you are not saying, we have 2,000 absentee ballots outstanding in Oakland County, Michigan, and we know who these voters are, and they're 3 or 4 voters, and they're high propensity Republicans that we know have a ballot that have not turned them in, and they usually vote by mail. We've got to go knock all 2,000 of those doors. That is the way to get the ballots in. So I think that sometimes it's a shiny object. Yes, it's important for messaging, but it does not replace the ground game, which is what the RNC does. And I will say this, Democrats understand process. And this is something I've been saying a lot. In 2022, through outside money, not through the DNC versus RNC, RNC outspent the DNC. Outside groups alone, where the Democrats are really organizing, they spent $600 million more than Republicans, $600 million more. And what are they doing? They're going into Pennsylvania and saying, how do I get people on the permanent absentee voter roll? How do I do this in Wisconsin? They invest in process. They don't care who the candidate is. They don't care. Republicans a lot of times say, oh, I want to wait to see who the nominee is. We need to become process driven a little bit more and year round focused on voter reg, the things the RNC does. There's a reason why 4 million more Republicans turned out in 2022. There's a reason why we won the popular vote and would have won the Electoral College in 2022. You need a ground game, and that's what the RNC does. So the shiny object matters, tech matters, but it does not in any way replace what you guys do and what the RNC does.
Very good, thank you. That is also a good segue into some of the other questions you've touched earlier, talked about election integrity that you've done in the last election and how you're working to expand it, as well as talking about the new Bank the Vote initiative, recognizing the importance of the fact that early voting, mail-in voting, all of those avenues are not going to go away. And we need to wake up, embrace them, and utilize them to our advantage and not let the Democrats have that. To those initiatives, do you want to talk any more about your Bank the Vote? I mean, I know you've talked that we need to do a little telling people maybe what it is as opposed to its nice name so that they can share it with their people who are like, oh no, I only vote on election day, and why it is so vital that we do indeed bank our votes.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Diana. You know, it's so important that we do vote the whole voting period that the Democrats have. Listen, we've got to fight bad law where we can. I'm always going to be against ballot harvesting. I'm against ranked choice voting. I'm against drop boxes. I like chain of custody. I like voter ID. But where the law is the law, like in Nevada, where they send a live ballot to every voter, we're not going to change that law. So we have to deal with the law that's there and run our ground game like the Democrats are. Okay, so ballot harvesting is different for Republicans. Let's be honest. Show of hands, everybody on the call. How many of you would give your ballot to somebody who knocked your door? Nobody. We won't do it. Republicans are less inclined to do that. We just are. It is a different way of doing it for us. In California, the way we have overcome it is we're doing it at the churches, right? We have drop boxes at churches, and people are willing to ballot collect at churches. In Montana, we're doing ballot harvesting as well. So we have to do it where it's legal. So Bank Your Vote is going to have an interactive website. We'll be launching that as we go, of every state, the process in every state. We're going to have launches for each state with elected officials. We're going to start probably with Wisconsin, with elected officials coming out, talking about the importance of banking your vote. And let's just think about it logically. If you had to feed your family for the winter, right? You had to feed your whole family for the whole winter. You're going into hibernation. Are you better off harvesting food for 45 days or one day? You're going to want the whole 45 days. Democrats are taking advantage of that whole 45 days. The RNC is doing that too, but we need more buy-in. We have people in our ecosystem who are saying, don't do that. And we need to educate and talk to voters about the importance of banking your vote for a couple reasons. One, then we know what threshold we have to get to on election day. Then we're chasing those swing voters on election day. And our resources aren't being deployed for every single voter in one day. So it makes sense. And Bank Your Vote's going to help us educate and also mobilize people. So go to bankyourvote.com, and then we will be sending you alerts on what to do in your state.
Yes, well, just to add to that, go to bankyourvote.com and pledge that you will be part of
Yes.
it. One other thing, and this is not on my little list of questions, and I'm going off script here, but personally speaking, you said it while you were talking. We need to stop referring to it as ballot harvesting, in my opinion, ballot collection, ballot delivery assistance, because people think of ballot harvesting is, at least Republicans, in a negative connotation. That's what the bad Democrats do. So they're going to not do that. But if we make them understand that we're collecting it or we're delivering, we're being UPS for the ballots, along those lines, I think that would be just a slightly better thing.
I like
Are there
that.
any other strategies or trainings that the RNC is kind of helping to push and promote, in the light of the fact that we used to have in days gone by, we had that 72-hour get out the vote window, because we only had that right before we didn't do all the early voting, we didn't do the mail-in voting. Now it's kind of, in some places, it's like a 2-month get out the vote drive.
Yeah. So
I
you
know
got
every state's a
Phil
little different.
Valenciano, Phil's on our call, who's our RPD. You're going to see more of that. So a couple things we're doing right now is we're doing regional fly-ins to different states, where we're bringing in the state party leadership, but we're also expanding that to county chairs and others to help educate them on a lot of these initiatives. You'll see more of that. We actually had, for the first time ever for the RNC, had a county chair fly-in. Tony Ann and Pam were a big part of that last year. Tony Ann was just at our regional fly-in as well. So these are things we're going to continue to do, but there will be more trainings and more access as we go forward, either through the RNC or through state parties or through county parties on these initiatives. I'm a big believer in our county parties, and the more we can take it local, where we have really strong county chairs, that we can make a difference. But it is going to take all of us coming together, recognizing that we have to bank these votes early if we're going to be successful, and do ballot collection and ballot chasing too. I mean, states like California and Nevada, you're no longer requesting an absentee ballot. That's not happening anymore. You are just being sent one, whether you want it or not. So we know that every single voter in the state has a ballot. So it's literally about chasing those ballots and getting them in. So it's different state by state. I hate Nevada's law. I think it's terrible, but we did just win 3 statewide races in Nevada in 2022 and flipped a gubernatorial seat and took out a Democrat incumbent governor. So these are states where we're doing it successfully. It didn't translate into every race. And I'll tell you the difference in 2022 in a lot of these races as to why one Republican won statewide and another didn't, is independent voters. Independent voters now make up 42% of our electorate in this country. If you cannot attract independent voters, you're going to have a hard time winning in some of these key battleground states and races. So that's going to be a big part of it. And I'm going to say something else that's not always popular, but go watch MSNBC and go watch CNN. for the next couple of days and watch how little they attack fellow Democrats. They don't do it. We have a lot of conservative media and they're great, but they're attacking other Republicans all the time. Right now, we need to be attacking one person, Joe Biden. We need to remember who we have to beat, Joe Biden. And if we're attacking each other, two things. Who wants to come to a party where we're always fighting? What independent says, oh, I want to be part of that? They're always mad at each other. We need to be a party that brings young people in. Why? Through hope, through optimism. We talk about things like school choice. We talk about economic opportunity. We talk about what our Republican governors did in states where they were kept open and kids have thrived and economies have boomed because we had the right policies. We talk about energy independence. We talk about protecting our border. When we talk about those things and we're kind and we're uplifting, we bring people in. So I'm going to challenge all of you, shut off the channel of anybody talking negatively about other Republicans the next several months, because they're not furthering the cause. We can win now, let's fight later. But we have to beat Joe Biden, and we can't do it if we're dividing amongst each other. So the big factor is going to be, how do we attract independents in 2024? They are a big voting bloc that we have to find a way to bring them over to our party if we're going to win.
That was exceedingly well put, Chairman. Yeah, I've for years and years said the one thing we excel at in this party, and it's not just the media and the commentators, is it's all of us, not necessarily you and me, but a lot of us, we excel at shooting each other. We do circular firing squad better than any group of Democrats out there. I also just wanted to commend you and the rest of the RNC for all of the initiatives and plans that you have laid out in action to help us close that gap on early and absentee voting, because that is something that we will not succeed at if we don't do. So I'm very happy to see that the RNC is putting such an importance on that and such value.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on a little bit along with the election integrity, we still have a lot of grassroots activists out there who believe that they can't trust the election process. What should we be telling these people that will resonate with them, that will make them believe and understand that they can trust the election process? And even if, I don't know, if they don't trust it 100%, they have to participate in it and believe in it, because not participating in it guarantees that the other side wins.
Listen, I get that. You know, I come from being Michigan chair in 2016. When we had the Jill Stein recount. People don't remember. It was a hand recount. I live in Wayne County, which is where Detroit is. I sat at the recount tables, right? I sat there. I'm not a chair who's like looking at it from the desk in DC. I like to be in there. I sat at the recount table in Broward County for Rick Scott in 2018. Listen, the poll books, 53% of the precincts could not be counted in the recount because the poll book did not match what was in the ballot box, which means the ballot box, you'd open it, it'd say there's 50 ballots, and the poll book would say there's 200. When there's that type of discrepancy, it was thrown out. 53%, think about that. In 2022 or 2020, in Wayne County, 70% of the absentee voting precincts couldn't be recounted because they didn't match. So that's a huge problem. So here's what I say. It's not going to go away by us not voting. It doesn't go away. So go be a poll watcher. Sign up for protectyourvote.com. Go be a poll watcher, or even better, figure out a way to be an election day worker. So in Wisconsin right now, to be an election day worker, you have to nominate folks. It is actually a position that has to be nominated and put in place this November. The RNC could never do this before, but in 2022, we got 5,000 different poll workers, ballot counters placed throughout the state of Wisconsin. 400 of them were just in Milwaukee County. I believe that initiative is why Ron Johnson won that Senate seat. It was the top targeted Senate seat in the country. If we had not had because it's really hard to cheat when people are watching.
Yeah.
It's really hard if you have people there. So it's that, and then we're going to have a whole team of legal lawyers that are on the ground. We had 39 different law firms engaged in 2022. We had 19 different councils in those battleground states. We're going to continue to do that, but sign up to be a poll watcher or a poll worker. And not voting is not an option. You just can't do that. The way you do it is inundate them with more votes. And that's how we're going to do it. But I understand those concerns. I am not saying they're not valid. I get that completely, but we've got to, and then we've got to elect Republican legislatures, secretaries of state and attorneys general and governors, and change laws. Look at Georgia. Georgia changed their laws coming out of 2020. The Department of Justice sued Georgia. I want you to think about that for a minute. The Department of Justice sued a state for saying you need to have voter ID. Joe Biden went in and said, this is Jim Crow 2.0. He called it racist. They lost the All-Star game. They lost $100 million in revenue for a state, a city in Atlanta that had been decimated by the pandemic. The president of the United States went in, the Department of Justice sued. Now the RNC defended Georgia. We got standing and we defended them against the Department of Justice. We did the same for Texas. We did the same for Florida. And what happened this last election with Georgia? Highest early vote turnout, larger number of minority voters than ever turning out, no election problems whatsoever. And guess what else? 8 out of 9 Republicans won statewide on election day. Brian Kemp, who had been in a runoff with Stacey Abrams in 2018, beat her by 9 points. Stacey Abrams, who had more money than anybody in the whole country, right? So we can do it with good laws. So we need to put pressure. I can't do this legally. I'm not allowed to do this, but you can put pressure on your legislatures to pass good election laws.
Very good. Thank you. I know we need to wrap this up, but I have 2 more quick questions for you. What polls should we pay attention to?
Gosh, I mean, I'll tell you the RNC, it's really fascinating. When we created our polling criteria for the presidential debate process, we actually went to a pretty known expert who I love. Her name's Kellyanne Conway.
Yep.
And she sat with us and showed us all the tricks that people use in polling to manipulate a poll to say whatever they want. So if you look at the criteria and the way we have put forward how to reach that 1% threshold, it's 800 likely registered Republicans, not adults. It's a combination of land and sell. So it's not online surveys, which can be very manipulated. It also doesn't allow them to round up if they don't meet the criteria of certain demographic that they're trying to reach. So I would say the RNC, through our debate process, actually, by the way of creating the polling criteria we have, is going to make the polling companies do a better job. So the polls that we use for the debates will only be using good metrics and good practices. And so those will be the ones I would start to trust. And but they are very, very problematic. And the polls were wrong all of 2020, all of 2022. And it's a real challenge in this. And they keep making money and they keep polling. We don't hold our pollsters accountable. And I'll ask you one other thing. For every race you were watching last year where your candidate didn't win, who ran their campaign? Who was their pollster? Who was their general contractor? Who was their campaign manager? Who did their commercials? Do you know? You don't. They probably all made millions of dollars and have houses in Miami or somewhere else because they go nameless and blameless. And then they go, oh, it's the RNC's fault. So I'm just going to tell you, until we fix our consultant class in the Republican Party and we start holding these consultants accountable who make millions of dollars off these races and these pollsters accountable, we're not going to see better product. So I'm putting them on blast. They don't love me right now. We've created a guidebook for candidates as to what they should be paying for TV and SMS texting. And we've created a focus group of other candidates so that we can help guide candidates not to be taken advantage of. Because for some of these guys, these candidates become piggy banks. They know they're going to raise a lot of money and they don't care if they win or lose. They just know it's a payday. And I care if we win or lose. And we need to I want you to ask yourself this, do some homework. Who were the consultants on all these races and how much money did they make? It's a lot.
Oh, I applaud you. I mean, I'd give you a standing ovation right now if I could, because you are so absolutely right about that. I've always loved you, Ronna, but even more than that.
I had a very interesting conversation with Tucker Carlson about it one day. I said, why don't you do an episode on that?
Yeah,
How do you do that, Tucker? Because I would love to see some of these consultants be held accountable. It's wrong, the amount of money they've taken from some of these candidates who would never run for office and don't know better. So we're really trying to protect these candidates and also that donor money to make sure it's going to what we want it to do, which is win elections.
fabulous. Okay, last question. How do you see the RNC and the NFRW and all of our state and local clubs collaborating to take back the White House next year,
I
2024?
I want to be on speed dial with Eileen. Eileen, here's my phone. I think we can be so instrumental. We have a grassroots committee at the RNC. It's run by Tony Ann. And really part of why we've created this committee is to create an ability for us to be working together as much as possible. So as we launch something like Bank Your Vote, you guys are launching it, or as you're doing something, we can promote it. And we need to be all working together because we are working in the same direction to save our country. So I'll tell you, NFRW is so amazing and indispensable to our party. And I know the efforts you did just registering voters in Texas, like actually making calls to leads. And there's ways that we're doing digital registration now. And the NFRW has been really key with a lot of those efforts. So I hope that we can partner more and more and more where we legally can, in case there's a lawyer on the call.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope so as well. It has been fabulous speaking to you. I am so proud, I'm privileged and honored to have been able to been the one to give you the questions. Thank you again for sharing this time with us. Do you have anything you'd like to say in closing? And if not, I will turn it back to Noriko. But
I
thank
just
you
want
again,
to thank,
Shannon.
thanks, Diane. Diane and I served in RNC together. I came on, you were state chair and I was the national committee woman. Just thank you all so much. I'll just end by just saying, I feel blessed every day to live in the United States of America. I love this country, especially as we just passed July 4th. And I am so excited for our future, but worried at the same time. And I know that this election will be a difference maker. So I hope to be a positive voice as we go forward. And I just hope you know that whatever divides us, whatever differences we may have, the things that unite us are so much more powerful. And right now that is saving the greatest nation on earth. So thank you all for what you do. And I look forward to working together to victory in 2024.